And as I mentioned, we've got Ashneer Grover that's going to join us for a fireside chat.
I would love to kick off this conversation regarding, like, what are you doing right now?
Do you want me to speak in Hindi or English?
It's up to you. We have some people who don't speak Hindi, but if you
Yeah, so I'm a bit worried about the 200 crores getting jeopardized. So I'll keep it in English for the benefit as well. Nothing, yeah. I'm just chilling now.
Nice.
See, I think what are you doing is a very middle class Indian question. Because the basic assumption is you have to be doing something at all points of time. And that's what we have all been brought up as middle class kids.
Yeah.
That you get education and then you keep doing something all the time, right?
Yeah.
It's a very activity driven thing.
Yeah.
But if you actually look at it, I'm 42. I've been part of 2 unicorns in India already, which is a probability wise very low probability event. There are like 110 unicorns, and to be part of 2 of them is absolutely low probability event coming out of a country of 1.4 billion people. So I'm just not pushing the probability anymore and just chilling.
I live in London now, but I was in Bangalore yesterday, and just the sheer amount of startups and founders, people that I met. My question to you is, what do you think from your experience is a strategic advantage that Indian founders have establishing companies in India that foreign people may not?
See, it's all about understanding the market better. If you ask me, I would be very, very lost if you told me to go and start a business in the UK or in the US. Because I've never worked there. I've never studied there. I don't understand the market at all. So I think just from the perspective of understanding the market, an Indian founder has an advantage being in India because it's very, very nuanced. It seems very simple. It seems great big numbers, right? But if you break it down, that 1.4 billion people doesn't mean anything. Eventually, you'll have to come down to, a 20 or a 40 million people who are relevant for your business. And in every business, getting hold of that 20, 40 million people is the trick of the trade, right? And that's where a lot of people lose it because the cost of acquisition of a customer goes up. Because once you start finding that 20, 40 million people in 1.4 billion, it becomes very tricky.
Yeah.
So I think Indian founders, just by virtue of having grown up in India and having that better understanding that you can't do a top-down approach in India at all. You have to sort of figure out who your true audience is and what is the least resistance way of reaching your audience so that your customer acquisition cost is the lowest.
That's interesting. And speaking of the challenges, I mean, I see your Instagram stories, you've traveled the world. What are some of the things that you wish Indian founders had access to? And that you don't just get, let's say, some of the challenges that people might face here. It seems pretty straightforward in the rest of the world. Because I know you have very strong opinions on like taxes and stuff.
Yes, the best world is if you can have a Dubai-like tax structure in India. I think that would solve for a lot. Not for just the leakage of money which happens on taxes, but just the whole process you have to build around taxes. GST billing in itself is a big industry because you have so many whatever you call them, HSN codes and not, right. So see, it's like this. There's no ideal world. The countries who have capital don't have such a deep market.
Yeah.
Right? They get capped out at whatever billion population that they have. And India, which has a seemingly endless market, does not have capital. And so yeah, if you have easier access to capital, I think the Indian founders can do a lot more. But even more than the capital, I just find that there has to be simpler regulations for a market which is low in numbers. The amount of regulation that India has is amazing. It's like, it's not helping the founders do more business in some way. Uh, uh, you know, if you want to do fintech, right? When I was doing fintech in 2018, fortunately we did not have to take so many licenses. Now, even to be a payment gateway, you need a payment aggregator license, right? To be a lender, you need an NBFC license. So it's some sort of a license raj again, right? Which has slowly crept into the tech space, and I think that is going to be sort of a boundary condition and not allow the sector to grow, because tech people don't like stupid regulations being imposed on them, right? They like the computing being the boundary condition, right? They don't like some uncle sitting, 60-year-old uncle who believes this is how India has to be run, and being told that this is the regulation. And these are people who have not even done business that way. Classic case, in gaming, they introduced 28% GST. Now, there is no use case, and it's like if you deposit 100 rupees into the app, the 28 rupees has to go to the government then and there. So, technically, if I deposit 100 rupees into the app and I don't want to play a game and I want to withdraw my money out, I'll only get 72, right? And I've not even played once. Right? So, these kind of things, the government is taking a very simplistic view that is gambling, whereas it is not. All gaming is not gambling. So yeah, the lesser regulation we have, and if somehow we can get into a regime of lesser regulation, it will be better for the startup ecosystem.
You spoke about regulations, and obviously we are a cloud provider, so we're talking about Indian sovereign cloud. So India's data remains in India, and obviously we are living in the age of AI. A lot of countries, obviously, they're going to come up with their own AI regulations. In Europe, it's particularly hard. For some, like Apple, they were banned, like you can't do Apple Intelligence or something like that. What are your thoughts on these AI regulations and stuff that might come in India? Where would you want to see the future heading for our country? How lenient should the government be? Or
या मेरे को AI इतना समझता ही नहीं है, मतलब जितना तो you're expecting me to be smart about everything, but I don't understand AI too much. But see, it is very simple. You need to stop making AI videos of Modi ji and Amit Shah because I think that becomes the biggest risk to regulation, right? If the politicians feel offended, right, and they're not going to understand anything else, right? You can do all the complex stuff in AI, right, which can be at the boundary, but you have to somehow teach your AI to not make videos on politicians because if that stops, then you're in a good spot, right? I don't think, see, Indian politicians are solving for the 1.3 billion, and that's where the focus is on. So the 100 million then end up being on the receiving end of things, right? Because you're not the target audience at all. जो 1.3 बिलियन लोगों को उनको संभालना है, उनके हिसाब से तुम तो संभले हुए हो, लाइक मतलब तुमने पैसा कमा लिया या तुमको पैसा कमाना आता है या तुम इतने पढ़े लिखे हो कि पैसा कमाना चाहिए. So they are not going to solve for you at all. So the moment someone scares them that it's going to undermine the sovereignty of the country or it's a security threat, that's going to spook them to bring regulation. Otherwise not.
And obviously, we know you from your vast entrepreneurship journey. We have a lot of founders here joining us. So, just starting out, 80 people, 90 people. What are some of the steps that you take to ensure that the core business values are ingrained in your organization as your company, is moving towards growth? say 100 employees and you move to 1,000, then 2,000. So how do you, because if you're in a closer team, it's much easier to share the same similar values. How do you ensure that while you are on a growth journey?
Yeah, see, things remain very simple for the first 20, 30 employees. Because in some sense, they are missionaries. They're not taking as much risk as you are taking as a founder, but still they are taking a level of risk which is more than they would take in a normal job, right? Because they don't know whether it's going to work or not, but they don't know whether you're the right guy doing the right thing for the right reason. But they still believe there is value in the product and therefore they join your organization. Uh, that 30 to 100 is also okay because on back of those missionaries, you'll have some mercenaries come in who saying ki theek hai, it's a good place to work where I can make maybe slightly more money than I can make in a normal job. Uh, Not many people are actually believers in equity. If you, we talk about the Swiggy millionaires and whatnot, but if you look at in general, people discount all the equity ownership they give you or you give them. In fact, they will simply discount. They will take it. They will not. It's not that if you're giving them an ESOP, they're going to say, no, I don't need the ESOP. They will take it, but in their mind, they've already discounted it to zero. Right? What they're only counting on is the salary that they take home. I think I've been part of organizations where I've seen at one point of time when I was at Blinkit, which is Grofers now, I had seen 5,500, 6,500 people, including people on the ground. And it gets crazy. If there's no way you can manage that kind of people. And I'm talking about going from 20 to like 6,500 in 9 months. Right? So all your systems get broken, everything gets broken. The only thing I would tell people is uh, people is not scale. Right? Sometimes you get this sense of grandeur that if I have 1,000 people working for me, I've achieved something. Very frankly, it means nothing. That number by itself means nothing. In fact, you should be very wary of adding people. So, for example, in Bharat, I was very clear I did not want so many people. So, I had the most unglamorous office and I had a fixed number of seats. So, you did not even have space to sit people, right? So the HR would also be very very cognizant कि अब hire करना नहीं करना because जगह ही नहीं है बिठाएंगे कहाँ. Right? So sometimes you have to put those artificial barriers, but just don't think that number of people means scale in business. Uh, if the roles are not clearly defined, if you're still in the growth phase, you're still figuring out the unit economics, that number is going to come and bite you sometime. And then one fine day you will do that 25-30% job slash, and you'll be taken to cleaners on Twitter and LinkedIn, right? So just be slow in adding people is what I recommend people.
Yeah. I have a very quick question on that. You mentioned about the offices and stuff. What's your take on remote jobs? Employees working remotely.
Yep, I don't like it.
Okay.
So I mean, there is home and there is office, and if you want to work, come to office. Right? As simple as that. There was a time in COVID when there was no other way, right? Everyone was scared for their life, and as against having a life and having a job, you could find a way where working remotely was the way around. But after COVID having gone, that system still continuing just does not make sense to me. So I'm a bit old school on that, but if you want to work, like turn up to office.
I saw your one Instagram reel or something that the reason I asked what you're doing right now is because you mentioned in an interview you are interested in politics. How far are you? And when you mean politics, do you mean what? Like running for prime minister or Delhi CM or Any specific area of government you're interested in, and when would that be happening?
Yeah, I was very interested in politics at one point of time because I just felt it is one place where we don't even have to do the hard things. There's so much stupidity. You have to just unwind a bit of that stupidity, and the markets are going to do everything else. Right? But I liking politics doesn't mean politics likes me, right? So I just figured that I'm just too straightforward a guy and just speak my mind out. And politics is not about that. It's about somehow being in power at whatever it takes, or by doing whatever it takes, uh, which does not appeal to me. But at one point of time, as I was very very serious. I thought I could run for an election and be up for it. But now I've realized that easier things in life to do.
Uh, we all think like living in India, obviously there are some challenges. I'm prime minister, hota, main ye kar deta, wo kar deta. I thought that as well. But yeah, no, I agree. Speaking of like our culture, I saw you share your views around parenthood once. You said that people in different countries, they're like there's a certain way that they get more experience in the younger age. And quickly, just I don't want to keep this tech focused only. I would love to learn from you what are some of the key things that you do differently as a parent.
As a parent, yeah, see, we had very different childhood.
Yeah.
I think our parents were too busy making the ends meet to be too involved in what the kids were doing. So, you could roam around in this. आपके जो गली में है या मोहल्ले में घूम सकते थे, आप छुपन छुपाई खेल सकते थे. आपका पेरेंट ढूंढने नहीं आ रहा था. Now, if the kid is not in front of you for 5 minutes, and you do not know where your kid is, right? You're going to freak out, right? There's no other way. So I think somewhere we have become, the number of children have come down between couples, right? So पहले होते थे यार 5 बच्चे भी हैं, किसी के 7 बच्चे भी हैं, एक गुम भी गया कुछ नहीं फर्क पड़ता, 6 तो हैं. But अभी क्या है कि सबके 2 बच्चे हो गए. It's like 2 kids, right? So you can't really afford to lose them. So we have become more helicopter parents. We're always hovering around. And I think the kids are also living in a bubble.
Yeah.
We have these housing societies which are fancy. Then they get on a bus, they go to school, they come back from school, they have a chauffeur, they have a car. So they are not exposed to the real India, right? We are sort of making a localized, developed India among the real India out there, right? So I think they're getting very, very, by the time they're coming out of school, they just don't know India. They're as good as an American kid who grew up in America and landed in India one fine day, right? So they're as good as that. And therefore, they invariably have to go to college also overseas because the competition is too tough. So I don't know. I think we're just creating kids to eventually settle abroad is what I feel now. The real entrepreneurs, the real founders are going to come from the tier 2, tier 3 cities, I feel. Because there, it's still, they have a better grasp of what real India is. As against at least what we have created in the cities.
My next question is: you have become a really popular icon on socials after Shark Tank, and there were a lot of you may have gotten some funny comments or memes. And I wanted to ask, what's your favorite one? So my favorite one is Doglapan. Ye sab Doglapan hai. So have you come across any one of those, and what would be your favorite pick?
So after Shark Tank, the social media went crazy.
Yeah.
I was not following social media for 2 months after I went on Shark Tank because I had bigger problems to solve. I was fighting my legal battles.
Yeah.
But after 2 months, I started, looking at my Instagram and things. And there were like a lot many memes. I think it's become like a culture in India or subculture in India. My favorite one was this AI video of my face being superimposed on Deepika Padukone's face. I think वो Goomer song था from one of the movies. So yeah, I think people do crazy stuff.
Yeah.
Doglapan as a word just came out of my mouth, and it became a meme. As it's like someone rediscovered some word. It was already a word in Hindi vocabulary. It's not I did not create it, right? But when it became so viral, what I did was I took trademark of Doglapan. So Doglapan in English. I've got a trademark of that. Right?
Okay.
But the problem is, what do I do of this trademark? Because it's not like every time someone says Doglapan, money falls into my bank account. So I let it be for a while. But when I came out with my autobiography, I called it Doglapan, right? And I used my name there, and thankfully it worked. So I ended up selling more than 100,000 copies of my book, and more than sort of 4 million listens on Kuku FM. But yeah, it's all good fun. Yeah, there's a lot of trolling which happens, and I keep telling people keep the India as a society, right? Social media is meant to vent things off. You have to get used to trolling, which is slightly tough because initially आपको लगता है यार क्यों गाली दे रहा भाई मैंने तेरा क्या बिगाड़ा है, right? But over time you get used to it. So as long as the trolling is 30%, 40%, and it's 50-60% genuine comments, I think you're doing great on social media.
Does anyone have any questions for Ashneer? Oh, we have one over there.
I've always thought that idea holds a lot of value, right? Ideation process is actually what makes a company grow, and that has been my goal in the beginning. So I have pitched in a lot of ideas to my managers, to my senior managers on different things that can be done differently, but it has never shown up because either they do not get selected or they cannot change it into a POC or they cannot really implement it. So what I did was I started learning different languages and I became a developer. And I built a lot of applications on top of it. But the biggest challenge is turning that POC or that idea into a startup. That is the challenge I have faced every time. Even joining hackathons, after that also, the biggest challenge has been there are so many people, there are millions of people who are part of it. So unless you go to the top 10, no one is actually going to recognize those things. Yeah.
Is that the return? Yeah.
Yeah. So I just want to know, what can you advise when it comes to young people who are looking to have their own startups or from an idea to a product to a startup, what would be the best scenario?
Thank you. Thank you for the question.
यार 140 करोड़ लोग हैं, ठीक है साला एक आइडिया पे किसको हर रोज आ गया ना 140 करोड़ आइडिया हर रोज के हैं आइडिया है जीरो वैल्यू इन इंडिया ये सामने नेहरू प्लेस मार्केट है मैं बोलता हूँ नेहरू प्लेस में ₹2.5 किलो बिकता है आइडिया क्या करूं मैं आइडिया का क्या करूं सी a lot of us have grown up seeing movies जहाँ पे हमको लगता है कि यार एक आइडिया आएगा मैं किसी को दे दूंगा वो मेरे को $5 मिलियन दे देगा मेरी लाइफ सेट हो जाएगी वो पाइप ड्रीम है वो ना कोई 5 मिलियन देने वाला है ना कोई आइडिया खरीदने वाला है I think the only thing which matters is execution. Classic case, Zomato, back when I was doing Grofers, which is now Blinkit, Zomato was only into restaurant discovery. Right? And Dipinder had a very strong view, saying कि मैं तो कुछ भी operational करूँगा ही नहीं मेरे को I don't want to do anything operational. उसी टाइम स्विगी आया स्विगी ने डिलीवरी करनी शुरू करी रेस्टोरेंट से नाउ टेक्निकली आइडिया तो स्विगी का था ठीक है स्विगी ने डिलीवरी करी बट चला आइडिया थोड़ा ना चला तो फैक्ट ये ना कि मेरे को घर पे खाना मिल रहा है 30 मिनट में राइट दैट इज व्हाट आई वैल्यूड अब श्री हर्षा बहुत शाना लड़का है उसने ये आइडिया निकाला कि इंडिया में डिलीवरी ऑफ फूड चलेगा उसको कोई पैसे नहीं देने वाला था. He had to build an actual business, actual app, actual service which people like. And then what happened? Dipinder also hired a guy called Gaurav Gupta, and उसको बोला भाई अब तू ये खड़ा कर delivery का. So he hired a guy who believed in delivery, and he created the delivery business. Zomato went IPO before Swiggy went IPO. So it's in the real market, real products, real service, real value to the customer matters. Right? Ideas have absolute zilch value.
Since you're execution first, as a startup, we have 1 or 2 attempts, so let's say maximum 4-5 attempts to get everything right. Give me 1 or 2 points that you would tell me that for execution, keep these 3 things really in check, and you probably will get it right in the next 4-5 attempts. What would that be?
इतना ही सिंपल होता सब कर लेते ना फिर तो 110 यूनिकॉर्न की होती है 1000 यूनिकॉर्न होती है राइट आई थिंक सी इट्स वेरी सिंपल आई थिंक फर्स्टली यू हैव टू बी वेरी वेरी क्लियर दैट यू आर डूइंग बिजनेस फॉर मनी a lot of times I come across founders who are either in too much in love with their product or or have this I don't know, unfounded notion that they are doing something for the society or for the country. So I think first put those notions in the dustbin. You have to love money more than you love anything. Right? Yeah, and that's the only reason you should be in business, to make money. Right? Once you have that clarity, then you will execute. यार ठीक है मेरा प्रोडक्ट था मेरे को अच्छा लग रहा है साला चल नहीं रहा मार्केट में भारत में क्या कुछ और करते हैं and the other thing is like you have to be an unashamed salesman. Like you have to be a salesman 24/7 as a founder. A lot of founders think कि नहीं यार ये सेल्सगिरी मेरा काम नहीं है but सेल्सगिरी ये नहीं होती कि सिर्फ कस्टमर को जाके प्रोडक्ट चिपकाना राइट it is also selling it to your employees, selling it to your co-founder, selling it to the investors, saying कि नहीं ये चलेगा यही चलेगा and I will make it big. Right? So I think you have to be somewhere an extremely good salesman. You might not come across as well. A lot of people think the smooth talker is a great salesman, right? My belief is a guy who promises and keeps up the promise is the ultimate salesman, because you promise your employee X, to deliver him X, you've sold, right? You promise your investor an X scale, you deliver an X scale before time, he's sold on you, right? But being a salesman is extremely important, and loving money is absolutely the core of it.
Thanks a lot for sharing, Ashneer sir. And that was it. We are a little bit wrapping up our time. So thanks a lot for joining everyone.